Thank you, everybody, for coming out this afternoon, and Happy New Year's to everybody, since this is the first meeting of the new year for us. So because of everybody's, it's being recorded by Cat TV, and everybody that's on can be seen and so forth. We don't need to go through a list of people on, I don't think. But what I'd like to do is just welcome everybody to the Southwest Vermont Supervisory Union Policy Drafting Committee. And I'll go through the agenda, and we can make changes if necessary to what's on the agenda, other items. This is my Zoom meeting, as everybody know. The first agenda item is public comments that we will have. The second item is minutes from our December 7th meeting. And then the third item is Arlington Sandgate policy discussion, with a couple of items up under that, policy 1000 review from SVSU, and then we have the process of sharing and developing policies along that line. We got the tracking sheet that we track all the things that we do and where they are. And then we have other future consideration policies that we didn't want to get lost out here. And at some point they will become a policy of the board to act on in the regular body of the agenda. And the next policy meeting is approximately be February 1. So with that, at this particular time, I'd like to hear whether there are any changes to the agenda process that need to take place before we start. And seeing none, you can either use your hand, reaction on the Zoom, or you can just send through a message or raise your hand. Somebody, since we got one screen, everybody can be seen. So without seeing anybody raising their hand in objection to what the agenda is today, we're ready to go. I see Dana is on now too as well, and Jeff is on. I see in the corner. So once again, I'll just welcome. At this particular time, then I'll ask, are there any public comments? And the comments can be from the group of board members for the public, or it can be someone from the public that may have a comment. And I don't see any. Jim?
No, I don't.
Okay, so it's none. Next, I'd like to have the minutes from December 7th, a nomination to accept the minutes from December 7th by someone.
Move to approve.
Okay, we got
Second.
Frank and Fran. Are there any are there any changes, comments in terms of the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of accepting the minutes as provided December 7th, just raise your hand or say I do. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All the ayes have it. Anybody opposed?
Leon, I'm abstaining because I wasn't there.
Okay. And Nicole is abstaining because she wasn't here. Thank you. The next item on the list is the Sandgate policy discussion. And then what I did was put down policy 1000 so that we'll all have an opportunity to see what it is and how we develop the policies in the SVSU right now in the current system. Are we planning to show that, Lisa? If you want to, can you share that? Because I like to go through that so everybody can see that.
Is it sharing?
Not yet.
Yes.
Okay, saying I was disabled from sharing.
I made you co-host.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
everybody see?
It's coming out. Yeah. Okay. So for everybody that's here, you probably had a copy of this in your packet for you, so you can have a chance to read this. But I'm going to go through some highlights because this is basically the substance of what we do and how we do things out there in terms of that. So starting with line 2 here, the policy will be developed with input from directors and appropriate staff from each of the districts in the supervisory union. And that's a highlight that I wanted everybody to really pretty much get out of that. And that we had we maintain a single policy manual will be maintained with all the policies throughout the district so that everybody will be looking at the same thing, the same policies. So that anytime you have individuals, staff, parents, and students and teachers that are in multiple districts, areas, and moving back and forth, the policies will be the same for them all in the district. So when we have a policy, the policy has been one that we've been reviewed and adopted by all of the members of the district, and it will stay the same throughout the district. The next area is the adoption process that we look at, that we have in the committee and its representatives in the districts will be responsible for initiating policy development. And we have members of the public as well, and compose a draft with the staff and so forth. And we have a draft committee, a draft of that, what the policy should be. So just as the name, that this is a drafting committee, and we draft what it needs to be for everyone. And while I'm going through this at this particular time here, there was some things that Lisa volunteered and went through and edited from us. We over the time we changed some things, added some things in the policy to try to make it easy for us, but then we made it more confusing for us and so forth. So the things in yellow with a strike through are something that we would like to move out of the policy. And that's because we don't really do that anymore. It was too much of a problem to identify the policies, the working policies, with a watermark and track it. When we had a lot of paper copies going around and so forth, we were trying to do that so that everybody would know what paper copy they had. And so now everything is pretty much all electronics, and we don't really need that. So with everybody's permission, we'll like to send that out when we do send this out, so that it'll be, the strike through would be something that we would like to remove. The line 15, it has another thing in it. The working documents will be placed on the district board agenda. And before, what we had down was SVAF board agenda and sequentially on each board agenda, and one and for discussion only. Well, that got to be confusing too, going around all over the place. And so we stopped that and started to do some shortcut types things. And so the working documents will be placed on each district board agenda for warning, and then we have comments that we may send back or come back to the board in if necessary, for back to the drafting committee that need to change something or input some other information.
The process of warning provides a discussion period anyway before a vote is taken for warning, so.
That's right, Dick, thanks. And that was really one of the reasons we wanted to try to eliminate some of the stuff, because we were trying to give the board's members to have a discussion, then come back and state it in the policy. We didn't really need to do that. It's sort of redundant. Okay. And so I mentioned earlier, line 18, policy committee take all comments and requests from for the modification into consideration to revise the policy as necessary. There is no what we like to do when we say that is that we want to hear all the concerns or comments from everybody, and then we have a discussion and review the rationale of it and how it affects one body of individuals, whether it be teachers or whether it be students or whether it be administrators along that line, or maybe confusing the parents in terms of that. So we try to meld all of those things in together and make it so that the policy is loop friendly to everybody and that it meets the rule of what the policy is supposed to be about. Okay. And 22 documents in the policy format was printed on white paper. We were going through that phase, started to go with the white paper, blue paper, green. We were doing all kind of things out there. So to try to make it easy, because these were things that came up. Somebody said, well, everybody will know what the copy was we had if we had it on one color this time and another color the next time. So that didn't work out either. So we'll like to remove that line 22, 23 out when it goes, before it goes back to SVSU to disseminate again. 24 was won by the board. The policy will be placed on each of the district's board's agenda for adoption. Well, let's do it. Placed on all of them. We're easy to do that, so it's just a strikeout. So just SVSU placed on all the board agendas. Okay, and we can slide up a little bit more. Once the policy has been won and adopted by each of the districts, the policy will return back to SVSU for a final adoption. So we've sent the policy to the various boards, districts. They all had a chance to read it and understand it, make comments if necessary along that line, and that information get fed back to the administrators or back to the policy committee. And then we will discuss whether we want to make any changes or the merits about what is it that somebody is wanting to have changed in there before it goes out for the final adoption at SVSU. All the state and federal policies are required, will be reviewed by the policy drafting committee, and the necessary revisions will be made by the policy drafting committee, as I just mentioned, that goes out to everybody. The drafting committee will review and approve by consensus the proposed administrative regs. Here's a section that we went through at one time. We didn't want to have administrative regs connected with the policies. And in the right, the policy is the board's responsibility. The administrator's responsibility is to provide administrative regulations to implement the policy throughout the district and make it a little bit more friendly. I like to talk about tier 1, tier 2, 3 documents along that line. So we wanted to know that these things were being done and that they exist. So a lot of the people, a lot of parents, or either teachers or students are aware. How do we know that this is being implemented? Well, we can see it. So we try to connect on the same site the administrative regs parts of the policy together with the policy. When Nick has a
We don't really have the right to approve administrative procedures, do we?
that's right. Well, that's why I said the consensus of it is the way we wrote that. It's not an approval. It's to know that they exist and that they merit are in sync with the policy. And that was the question. So, well, how do you get around knowing that if you don't see the the administrative regs? So we wanted to see them and just acknowledge that, yep, we saw them, and that there's no real issues with them along that line, and not that we're trying to make adjustments and approving those just like we do policy development. Is that pretty straightforward?
One of the things that we also said was that administrative regs could be changed more frequently than a policy. So we were short on words for the policy, but long on words for the administrative reg.
Well, thank you, Jackie. That's true. If there were some, the policy is a broad document, and broad in a sense. You get the fine-tuned things in the administrative regs, and sometimes they may need it to be tweaked and changed a little bit, and they don't have to come back to the board for that. Administrators can do that because they didn't change the policy, the intent of what the policy was trying to do. It was just the method by which they're going about trying to implement what the policy is saying may needed to be tweaked or adjusted so that they can better communicate with parents and teachers and students and like. Okay. The next thing was to have a heading and an adoption history format for each of the policies, since we have so many of them out here and so along this line. So the next section contains the heading with the name of each one of the districts and the supervisory union at the top left corner of the document, and it has a policy number on it. And we also, because some policies are required, had an opportunity to put required up under the policy number in that particular area, so that everybody know that this is a required policy, because we have some that are not required by Department of Education, but they're necessary for us to function as a multi-district unit. Down below that, okay, at least we got you're looking at the heading piece, which will be straightened up because we had consolidated areas of the district and so forth, and we got to revise that, and we'll be sending that out that way by taking the separate districts out and putting them in one title of the Southwest Vermont Union Elementary School District. And the next piece down, because what we were trying to do here is show the elementary piece in here, and then we wanted to keep track of when the policy was won, when it was adopted. When we reviewed it, we tried to, if we reviewed it and didn't make any changes, we needed to have a review date. And somebody looked at it and said, that policy is 20 years old. Well, we looked at it several times in between, and here's when we looked at it on the review date, and we didn't make any changes because it was still relevant. And when we got started, and if we replaced an old policy with something else or something got combined, we have replaced policy such and such a thing from another area, another district, if they had one out there and it finally became an SVSU policy, and as part of one of the others, it would be showing the number that it replaced. And the administrative procedures in terms of saying whether it was completed or not, because somebody keep asking that, do they have them? Do we have them? Do we have them? Well, it was easy for us to just create a column and then say, yep or no, and move on. The next thing is the dissemination. Well, you got a lot of policies, and you need to disseminate them some kind of way. And the basic thing that I really wanted to get out of this is that the policy will be maintained electronically. We used to have books, hard copies in the library. We had had them all over the place, town office, you name it. We were trying to put
All in the basement of central office.
Yeah. And I got copies right here in my house because I wanted my own copy. I know Dick got copies. You know, we had them all. And so we were trying to manage all those copies all over the place. So it's easier to do it electronically right now. And so from that, but what we still wanted to have in there is something in the bottom part of that, line 8. The building principals will review all new policies and staff meetings to assure that all staff and parents and students that are affected, who may be affected by the policy, understand what it is that the policy is being is that exists, and that whatever it is that they need to be abiding by, and understanding of that policy. So that you wanted to know where how that was how we made sure that every person and parent or entity in the district get a chance to understand that there's a policy, because we have the administrators at that part start to review it at the staff meetings, and then students alike get to have what policies affect them reviewed in their handbook, and that handbook in turn go to the parents, and everybody can see what exists out there. With that, the next section is just one that you get a chance to see what it looked like for information in terms of this particular policy. When we actually started it out from the SVSU was May 96, and we adopted it by June 16, 98. Sometimes it takes a long time for these policies to work its way through everybody and all of the boards and come back. And then the bottom line below is the second set of wanting and adopting and replacement review areas along that line. So the protocol for drafting and adopting procedures to this particular policy 1000. They wanted to make note that individual boards may have a policy specific to the district, and that is an example of that is that there may be a tuition requirement that's the responsible of middle school or another school that's different than the SVSU, and that policy, the board, the district of that area, the board members have the right to have and have rule on that policy and provide that policy. But what we wanted to do is make sure we have it all in the same place. And so if there is one out there, which is 5701 and 5703, that deal with tuition of students, I believe that's what those are. And they you can find those here and on the site. So that's basically what I wanted to do, was go through that policy that way in at the beginning of the year, because one, we were going to be discussing things with Arlington and Sandgate, and I wanted to make sure that the system that was in place now, you had an opportunity to see that. I see Dick's got his hand up. Go ahead. Is that your hand up, Dick?
Yeah, I was just wondering why we even need line 16. The protocol's already in there. It's just referencing something that is already there, and then people are looking for a heading that says protocol or something else ridiculous. Do we even need that line?
Protocols are drafted and adopted in policies attached to policy 100. We've already mentioned that if there was going to be administrative regs, we got it, and that's what that would be pertaining to. So if we can strike that as well and remove it for that very reason. Thank you, Dick.
And we're going to hold off, actually, well, we don't actually need to rewarn this, do we, unless Arlington and Sandgate have concerns?
No, we do have to
No.
warn it because we changed the policy.
We did. I mean, we do. Yes. This is why I was saying that those are there. So right now, the changes that are in here to date will be changes that we're going to pass on to SVSU to do that. The next item, this is the discussion, and what we wanted to do was have this review to open up the door for the opportunity to share the format in which we go about in terms of incorporating information in the form of a policy with everybody. And since Arlington and Sandgate was going to be joining us, I wanted to make sure that you saw the symbiotic type of relationship that we have in terms of making adjustments to policies and trying to format them in a manner so that they can be seen by all. And so if there are things that are in these particular policies that districts needed to have adjustments made or need to be incorporated, there's room to do all of those particular things up under the heading of the title of the particular policy and have it all in one place. If we're having this particular policy is dealing with the policy 1000, the drafting process, anything that we needed to have in there that was pertaining to any other districts or concerns would need to be formatted so that it'll fall into this particular category. All right. Thank you, Sandra. Sandra, I see she's aboard. Okay. So with that, I wanted to just open the floor. Did I forget anything? First of all, did I miss anything? If not, I just wanted to have a discussion of sharing and development of policy pieces since Arlington and Sandgate was existing out here, and now we're trying to look at how we're going to melt things into SVSU, then we need to have a healthy discussion in terms of what it is and how and when and so forth along that line in terms of policies. And so I'm ready to open the door for a discussion there. If we can. Dick, someone waving a hand in?
I don't want to interrupt Nicole there, but we haven't seen anything that Arlington and Sandgate have put together up to this point, have we?
We've not requested anything, to look at anything. I mean, I went out on the site to see some things and how things were going, but we wanted to save that for tonight so that if there are things to discuss, how we want to do it, I wanted to make that equally, have an equal opportunity to discuss how we want to really approach that now that you see how the SVSU policies develop and in place and so forth. And I should have said that, okay, how do we get all of the policies that are currently in existence for SVSU is on the website under the All About Us on the svsu.org site, and you go there and you'll see click on All About Us, and then you'll see a section that says policies, and you can see them all along that line. So I didn't need to do anything else, but I did see, I mean, again, we're giving Arlington and Sandgate the opportunity to say how they want to approach the
Leon,
yes.
given that Arlington and Sandgate are joining as member districts to the SVSU, I don't know that we would necessarily have, I mean, I think we can review and compare policies to see if there are any places where we have a disconnect, but if the way you develop policies is they're drafted at the SU level, they're reviewed by the districts and then adopted, I would assume that as we come into your SU, that the policies that are in place would then be adopted by, I mean, you're not really even adopting them because they're already SVSU policies.
Well, when you say adopted, I mean, if you were to say, okay, I'm coming in and say all of the policies that are in SVSU, if you don't have one for each one of those or whatever it is, then you can do a blanket adopt of all policies as the SVSU, and then the information might, and looking at this, will have to have a title change and so forth along that line. But if you have something for a particular policy that you're already doing, we needed to, I'm thinking you needed to compare so that you can see that what it is that you may have that may be different than what we already have in place here, and that whether we needed to keep something that's in that by updating the one that's on the current SVSU site is the way I was thinking that you may want to go about doing that. And that way, I mean, doing it one at a time, or you can do it, well, we got to do it one at a time because I have no idea what's out in existence.
Well, I was just going to say, we aren't on a fixed schedule. Every time something changes, COVID might be a good example for the cameras recordings. We just make changes as we need to. So if Arlington and Sandgate want to come in and it's something that they need changed, then we meet and revise the policy if necessary.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think largely there should be because the way you have the policy drafting committee policy written, it says all member districts will will follow the SVSU policies. So I don't, with Arlington and Sandgate coming into the SVSU, I don't know that anything specific needs to be done to bring, we're a member district, so we're a member district now falling into the SVSU policies. If there are discrepancies, to Dick's point, I think we can bring them up for review as we go forward. But short of that, I would think that Arlington and Sandgate would now be under the purview of the SVSU policies.
I would, yes, Dana?
Can I talk for a second?
Yes, please.
Thank you. I think, Ms. Whalen, that you're correct. I think what the concern was to be cognizant and mindful of that. We right now have some policies which may be specific to certain school districts as opposed to the greater SU. And so trying to be cognizant and mindful that you as well from Arlington and Sandgate may have some very specific policies.
Right.
I suspect that the majority of your policies are the recommended and required policies from the Vermont School Boards Association.
Correct.
Which the SU has those plus.
Right.
Because the SU has, Southwest Vermont has always been, as I said to Leon, very on the side of that policy was not a bad thing, right? Having enunciated policies is helpful in a very large educational environment. So I think that's what Leon was trying to say. In terms of coming in as a member district, Leon, I think
right.
Other than if there are policies which Arlington Sandgate have currently, which for some reason would conflict, I don't think you need to address them. They've already adopted the Vermont School Boards Association. So unless there's some conflict, in other words, that you've modified the policy to some extent at the SVSU level, you shouldn't have to do that. I think it is more going to be, unfortunately, for the Arlington Sandgate folks to be brought up to speed on the additional policies that you all have.
Right. Well, and so to give you a little bit of history, when I first came on the board, I don't know how long ago, a long time ago, we had an abundance of policies, like ridiculous amounts of policies, and 2 policies that were under different numbers that were really the same thing. And so we went through kind of a whole review of our policies and identified that a lot of things that we had titled as policies were really procedures. They were building level procedures. And so we have over time tried to migrate to adopting the VSBA model policies and then using building specific procedures. And so that was one of my questions for this group, is where you draw the distinction between a policy and a procedure, and do they live in the same document or do they live in separate documents? Because Dina, I think that would make things a little bit easier if we had standardized SU policies and then building procedures, or as you guys are calling them, regulations, that we could adopt that our principals could then use at the district level.
So Jim, you also may need to put into that. I think the issue is that my sense is, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, your administrative procedures, which would be procedures, are SU-wide, not different level specific on some of them.
Yes.
And on some of them they are. If you go, the clearest example that I could give you is if you go up on the Southwest Vermont webpage, you can see that there's a FERPA policy, I believe. Is that the one, Lisa and Leon, that you all found? Or Laura, I mean, somebody knows that we had a FERPA policy, and then it's probably about 18 pages of procedures, which should be separated out to the extent that the procedure should be considered a distinct issue. That is a policy that you're not going to see on the Vermont School Boards Association, but it's a policy that for various reasons that and a procedure that was important for the SU to have. And I mean, I could argue there are reasons why it would still be relevant today. But I agree with you. So the procedures in that one, if I'm identifying the correct one, would be SU wide. There wouldn't be variation for between a high school or between an elementary school, because what you're talking about is a federal regulation that we're having a policy and procedure on how to manage it.
But there are some things between the high school, the middle school, and the elementary school, and I like to just look at them. So, you know, kids learn different, and that's why, and they are treated differently under the same policy, but because of the age dependence and the structure, those things are a little bit different, could be, in some cases, a little different. And that's why I wanted to make sure that we didn't just take for granted everything out here. I mean, I wanted to open the door to make sure that if there are things that need to be concerned or be added or changed, that we have the opportunity to try to work those things in so that it would make it as easy as possible. But under the same policy, Nicole, if the policy is there and then you have an administrative procedure, and that administrative procedure has an opportunity to be different in versus the level that we talked about, high school, middle school, and elementary, kindergarten, or vice versa. So depending on where you wanted to sell on in terms of those administrative regs, but then you do have a chance to be able to mold those things to better fit the circumstances that now that you're in a different location. I mean, in Sandgate versus this area may want to make some changes or do something along that line under the same policy with just procedures.
Leon, maybe the thing to do, just as a thought, is for Arlington and Sandgate to begin to look at all of your policies that are required policies and see where we might have differences in what our current policies are compared to what SVSU's policies are, and then put them on a list to be reviewed. I don't think that there's going to be anything that's going to stop us. But if what we're trying to accomplish is making sure that we bring that Arlington and Sandgate can comfortably say we can follow all of SVSU's policy, maybe what we should be doing is start with the required policies and do a review of those first.
I think that's what we're trying to do here.
Okay.
With
Okay.
somebody else about
that's
okay, that wheel.
It's Jeff.
Oh, it's Jeff. I see you now.
Yeah. Sorry, no, that sounds like it sounds like at this point, like Nicole said, is best for us to review the current BVSU policies and look at compare those to the SVSU policies. And I suspect a lot of them are the SBA standard policies or similar, and that there shouldn't be many issues there. But I definitely appreciate the review of the policy drafting process, which I think helps me a lot just in kind of getting my head around the process for going forward, but also how you got where you are and how we can kind of work work Arlington, Sandgate into the district, but also the opportunity to kind of review those and provide some feedback. So I think if we take the time to review those now, I suspect that there won't be many needed changes or issues, but yeah, we can go ahead and start that review and working with our administration on regulations as well.
So,
Hey, Leon, it's Phil Basic. Can I just say a quick word or two?
louder. I couldn't get it, Bill.
Leon, I'm sorry, I've got a bad connection here. Phil Basie, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I just, just going through this, generally, we're not a very policy-driven district. We tend to rely on just a lot of day-to-day procedures, but the ones that I would really see would probably be ones at the high school, such as, or the elementary schools. The big ones I would see would be things like visitation, visitors in the building, which, we didn't have to worry about this year. Things like athletic policies or procedures. I'm not sure how you do those in your district. And things like absentee procedures or policy. So I don't know, if you have those policies or procedures, and it would really just be teasing a lot of those things out. And those are really day-to-day things that are unique to the Arlington schools. But as far as, I would say 95% of them, if we were to go through like the idling policy for diesel or the, procurement policies, those are all VSBA.
Right. Yeah, right. And we have all of those policies out there that
Right.
you mentioned. So we just wanted to be as friendly as possible in terms of making sure that it wasn't a shock in any areas of information and overflow and so forth along that line. So to go about the process, we wanted to make it as painless as possible.
Can I just ask a specific question that would be helpful in our thinking going forward? Because I do visit SVS schools, and your visitor policy or procedure is different from the BVSU policy or procedure, which is really ours is a procedure at the school level. We don't have, you have an elaborate system of allowing visitors into your building that we do not. Jim, I don't know if you can comment about, we don't have the badges.
We don't have the ID systems that we have in our office, right?
So I don't know if that's something, we're not opposed to it. I don't think there'd be any.
That wasn't a policy that did that. That was, there's not a policy that says we have to have those identikit at the door. We did that as procedure.
Okay.
And so if your procedure is different from that and you wanted to be with Jim and saying this is the best way to handle those particular things and entering and out of the building for security, it would be such in terms of campus location that may want some different wording or something.
Right. So then the Arlington School District would still be able to, within reason, obviously, the school security is a tough one because we all want to be as secure as possible, but we would be able to do it a little bit different than the SVSU if we wanted to. I don't think anybody, this isn't a good example because I think that where people might actually like the system that the SVSU uses, but if they wanted to do it different, there still could be some wiggle room. I know like athletic, because that's, always those hot button ones. I know like with the athletic policy that the principal would want to be able to retain the ability to, see when their children are eligible or not.
Most of that's procedure, though.
Right. That's right. I just want to double check because sometimes, there are school systems, and I think we did have it wrapped up, Nicole, one time in a policy, as well.
We did. Yeah.
So I just want to make sure. So, my suggestion would be, I know we're all real busy until March with the budgets. And then maybe afterwards, when we still have, you still have all of April, May, and June to really sit down and get into this work and compare and then see what we have. I think it's really probably just sitting down. I don't think it's going to be a ton of rewriting or very much work at all other than, a large upfront going through both policies. And that's work on our end, obviously, that we need to do.
I think at the beginning, you mentioned, Nicole, I think you mentioned that just a blanket acceptance of all of SVSU policies, is that, and then work from that. When I said you want all the required policies, I'm sorry, a blanket acceptance of all of those without having to go about doing anything else out here along that line. And then as we start to flow with things, we have some reviews and take things into consideration out there along that line. I'm just trying to see, how do we want to go about rolling this out?
Do we actually need to have a motion to include Arlington and Sandgate in the SVSU policies? Or,
I don't think so, Nicole.
Yeah, I
Coming
wouldn't-
back to what you said earlier, that this is just gonna transpire, right? It's just gonna happen.
right,
So,
and so,
Though I don't oppose it, somebody wants to take a vote to do that, to reinforce it, but I don't think.
Well, Dana, you got a question about the logistics of changing the format and incorporating the names and all that other stuff out there. You're going to talk about that, that's all.
well, it's interesting, Leon, because I think the way I would look at it is more of a who's going to just make some minor changes, right? So if Arlington Sandgate has a policy about idling buses and their policy has the date that their boards approved it, I think for historical context and going forward, and I use that one because it is a recommended or required policy. Going forward, just on the bottom of your policy, which says that, or the SVSU policy, you would add them as a member district, the date it was adopted. And I think that's fine. They're still existing as Arlington Sandgate as a member district. So they're not merging with like your unified elementary district.
Right.
So I think that's perfectly acceptable for historical context. You just have the date that if they have it, that they adopted it. Right? You know what I'm saying is
Yeah, I know that part, and that's what I was wanting to just make sure that we started the process of saying, let's do that, and it shows them all. If one was in existence somewhere else, and that replaces that, so that the record would show that the particular number that you had and the idling of buses, this particular policy replaced that, it may be the same thing, but we want to make that record as clear as possible.
well, you will have to go through all of your policy documents to update the header and that tracking, correct?
Right.
Yep. Yes.
So but you don't have to approve making those changes, do you? That's just a format.
Right.
I would consider that just a format issue.
That's the format, right?
So maybe when you add Arlington and Sandgate, the date adopted for us would be the beginning of the school year,
So it would be July 1 of 2020.
July 1 of 2021.
Good suggestion.
And for you guys, for the other member districts, the adoption date would predate that because you have had this policy in place. But maybe for Arlington and Sandgate, we put 7/1/2021 as the adoption date for all policies as we come in.
Okay.
In terms of policies that SVSU has, which Arlington Sandgate doesn't have, those are the ones that would have to go for approval to your member district to have you all then approve and adopt those. The ones that exist that are between the two of you, the same, not a problem to do it how you've outlined it.
Okay.
Question, Dina. What
Yes.
if they're not the same? What if we have similar, for the same topic, but they're not the same?
Then I think that's when we put aside and that we have a conversation, and if it's a nominal difference in verbiage because, well, Leon had me involved in it, then we can deal with that. But if it is conceptually a big conflict between the two, then I think the policy committee has to have that conversation.
All right. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I forgot that part of all of our policies, we do try to do our best to have legal review of all of the policies.
Yeah, I'm apparently in your policy for your policies.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's right.
I marked that to say, and I didn't say that. So that's a question that we bring, that sometime a lot of people ask, is this really good or bad? And whether that's legal, you're not violating any laws and so forth. And we said, well, that's why we have an attorney, and as we do these things, we run those things by in that direction so that we'll make sure that we are trying to consider everything that's legally the right thing to do. So that sounds good to me in terms of the date. Lisa has a question.
I have a question. Well, for Nicole, Jeff, or Bill, I'm just wondering, right now, how, or in the past, how have policies been, developed in the BVSU?
They're developed at the SU level and brought then to the districts.
Okay, so pretty much like each of the,
Yeah.
and then it gets a final vote?
It gets a final vote it gets a first reading, second reading at the district level, and then same at the SU level. I mean, our difference is it's all the same people sitting at the same table, having the same conversations, but taking two different votes.
Okay, good.
Okay, so it's just, that sounds good to be able to get the heading inscription with the right information in it and what the date will be on that date for those particular policies. And if any procedures needed to be reviewed, they'll be compared and procedures to be adjusted if necessary.
So the thing that I've written down here in terms of, I have three things written down: that we will go through required policies to identify any differences and bring those back to this policy committee. The second is policies that Arlington or Sandgate doesn't have, that Arlington and Sandgate will need to vote to adopt the SVSU policies, and then we'll reflect that date. And then all others would then just have the 7/1/2021 as a date adopted. If we already have the policy, they're the same, nothing's changing. We don't have to take any action. We'll just bring those on with that date. Okay.
Okay.
Well, you make that sound like, it's
Just like that. We'll just do it like that.
then I get a little anxiety when I it could be and fall on, a lot of that's going to fall on Lisa too. Hi, Lisa.
Yep. I'm already planning.
Yeah.
I've been involved in our policy since I got on the board, so maybe Lisa and I can work together and get this straightened out.
Is there an easy way to identify like what can be just, how do we, because even though sometimes I think, Lisa, like on our own, a model policy that we've taken from the school board association, and then it gets before our policy committee, and some people start wordsmithing a little and change a few words. It's happened. So the model policies from the Vermont School Board Association that Arlington's adopted and Sandgate's adopted and that we've adopted could have a few words that don't completely mesh, Dina. So I don't know if, does that
But if
mean,
that's a distinction, then not a real difference.
And that's right, and that's not violating the policy.
Right.
Some of those things were made so that the people in the district will better understand what the policy intent was trying to gain.
So we're not, as long as the intent of the policy is the same, we're not going to worry that it may not be a word for word match.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct, unless for some reason the Arlington Sandgate representatives are very strongly in opposition to whatever the change is. Yes,
Right.
I don't see that as a bigger issue. I think that there are things. You're right, and just because this is being recorded, I feel the need to say this. I'm not always the one who changes the language in this policy.
Oh, no, I didn't mean that. If that it was implied. That is not what was said.
No,
Legal review.
From you, I mean, where's Frank Hans? Is he here?
But I mean, I can think of there are very few and far between times when I actually come to this meeting, and normally it is because there is a major issue regarding or a major concern about a policy, and we've had that happen over the last year and a half, I think twice.
Yeah, because I've had you only getting our agenda maybe for a year and a half now.
Right. I used to get it, and now it's about a year and a half now. Yeah. So, but yeah, I don't think so. So I can envision that there are some things that are there, but to be brutally frank about it, you all should have the same HHB policy, right?
Yeah.
And you should all have the same procedures for that, because that was a required policy. I think it's also one that was identified by AOE that shouldn't have been modified. And I know I didn't make modifications to it. So it should be exactly that. That's the no-brainer one. The minor language changes, I think if you just have to have a quick conversation, is everybody okay with it? Then everybody's okay with it. It's those which are more specific that are going to be problematic. And to the extent that the policy can be acceptable to all and the procedures maybe need to be what's modified,
That's what I'm thinking.
Correct.
would be a better way of handling that, because procedures don't have to go through the same formalized
Yep.
approval process.
Right.
So that's how I would look at it. I don't think you're going to have a lot of big clashes.
No.
I think you're going to have a lot of little wordsmithing that somebody didn't like how it was said, and I can think of two policies that Lisa could also bring up to Nicole, which got modified over the last year or so, and what the basis was. And they can do that offline.
So Lisa, maybe the thing to do is, I don't know how easy it is to pull a list of the I think it's straight off the VSBA site, all the required policies.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can look
Yeah.
at ones that you've recently modified or edited or adopted. And we can do the same because we've done some policy revision, our attendance policy, which is really went from a policy to a procedure. So maybe we can kind of look at those priority lists, because I think it sounds like the goal would be to have all of this, at least on the required policies, done for the July start of the school year.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
And so if I'm right, Lisa, I think all of the required policies are already labeled in that column box, I believe. It may be some exceptions out there, but
Yeah, but I mean, you have to open the policy to see that. But
Right.
if I pulled the list, I could just go by the names and know which,
Okay.
actually documents to pull.
okay.
That would be great. And then Jeff and I can work together on reviewing what we have in place, and then either bring back any differences for this committee to then review, or we can put on our district agendas to make sure that we adopt ones that we don't already have in place for a July start. Yeah, and then everything else that has no change will just become an adoption date of July 1st. Okay.
That's anything else? I like that. You got Fran, and you got Christopher, and you got who else out here to have anything that you want to say? And Sandra, you do notice the mix of individuals that are on the board. We talked about that. We have principals, and we got board members, and we have occasionally, and we have administrators, and we have a couple of people from the community every so often that comes to the meeting, so that we can make sure we review everything and that we get that input in all kinds of ways for the policy.
Bill, are you okay with that as sort of actions for us?
Yeah, I think it's a really good meeting. I think we're all on the same page, but we're not really sure. It seems like we're all talking about the same thing, so I'm feeling pretty good.
Okay.
We don't know what we don't know.
But we're willing to work together to figure it out.
That's
Yeah.
right.
That's good. That's
Certainly been the conversation today. It certainly sounds cooperative. So
right. All right.
thankful for that.
Oh, we're generally nice people.
See, that's not what Bill was telling me. Kidding,
Nice, Jim.
Bill. Kidding, Bill.
I know.
So is there anything else that we want to discuss under that, under item 3, along that line? Have we got that? So we've captured that pretty much, and Nicole summarized the thing pretty much several times with us, so I think we got it down there. The next item then, just to see what the tracking sheet will look like. If Lisa could bring it.
Wrong one.
Nope.
Wait, wrong one.
So
Just so
So
that you see what the tracking sheet look like, how we do things. Dick, you got comment?
Well, I got to bring 7 policies to the SVSU on, I think it's the 21st, to be warned, and I don't have copies as we have decided they should be written.
We,
You will
what do
when
you
the
mean?
packet goes out.
Oh, okay.
And
That's-
they'll be posted on the website, and actually now it's gonna be 8, because it's going to include the one we just discussed.
Okay, that's really my concern because historically at the SVSU meeting, we've had to defend policies and not having the exact wording makes a difference. So thank you.
Yeah, most of these, I don't believe, if I'm thinking, I haven't looked at them recently, but they didn't have a lot of changes. They were probably just very minor language, so I'm hoping it'll go fast.
No, not a lot. And 20 for code 25 and 26 will have a number by then, I think.
Right, those are the 2 new ones that came on.
Yes.
So
Thank you. It's
And
just
pretty much those can't be changed. They have to stay the way they are.
Yes, yes.
but they don't have to set the code, correct?
The number
Right.
for them was going to take an SVSU number.
Yeah, they'll have an SVSU number.
I just get real insecure when I gotta carry some of these things forward to people who ask a lot of questions like Fran Kinney and stuff like that.
Well, I'll be
Yeah,
there.
I'm trying to be quiet tonight.
Okay.
So Leon, can I just interrupt? I'm assuming you're fine with me and you don't need my participation anymore?
I would agree with that statement.
Okay,
Yes, thank you.
not a problem. You all have a very nice night. Thank you.
Thanks, Dina.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I was getting ready to say something about the tracking sheet in terms of how this is what we try to we have in place, so you know where it's going from when it went to the SVSU. Well, the first thing, the policy number and a brief description and whether it's required by our administrators or not, whether they're required by the State Department of Education, state law, and whether we have administrative regs confirmed and in place for that, just to show that. And then when it went to SVSU, a date and whether it was approved and so forth along that line, of whether it got returned or with comments. And then it goes to the next district, SVUESD, the new district in Mount Anthony, North Bennington, and then we would then have to have this sheet probably modified for Arlington and Sandgate.
Yep.
There's another column over here so that we'll know when something went through in the date in terms of that. And that's what the tracking sheet does. If something get held up somewhere, you can look and say, oh, it went to MAU on this particular date and it hadn't moved. You know, and it means somebody should have something or have some questions. So part of the job that we do at the committee level is trying to make sure that members that are represented here from the different districts ask enough questions or have enough working knowledge of the policy such that when it goes before that district or that board meeting, that they can explain what it is and why certain things were that way they are. So that things can move along smoothly. And everybody likes to try to add their critiqueness to it or word critiqueness, and a lot of it we were able to absorb in there without having to change the meaning of the policy. But we wanted to make sure everybody, if you can live with it and it's not grammatically and not infringing upon the rules of what the policy is about, we ask that we try to move them along. So that's what this document does, is show all of those that way. And we try to review that when we have a policy meeting. Dick?
I'm sorry to dominate this meeting, but am I correct that 5011 was folded into 5010?
I believe so.
Yes, yes. If I went back through our notes way back, that was several months.
That was a year ago.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I'm saying, is there anything else in terms of the tracking sheet? No? Okay. Then the next thing is that we have future consideration of policies. That number could change. I won't try to make out an agenda right now, moving anything up from this at this particular time here, unless somebody indicate that one of these down below need to move up specifically for our next meeting to agree on a review. Attendance was something I think I heard mentioned.
Yeah.
So we may need to move attendance up.
Yeah. Hey, Leon.
Yes, that's Laura.
Yes, thank you for that. And so attendance is one, and we would have representation from the counseling group present. And Nicole, it was great to hear that that was a policy too you were also curious about. So I think that would be timely.
Yeah.
And then Renee and I need to just share with you, which would help in learning our process, the admin regs for the 2 title policies. Just because we have a state required deadline for those admin regs. So we just want to share with you what they are.
Okay. That would be
Thank you.
good. So now we're starting to make our agenda out for next month. Now, and was the conflict of hiring one that we needed to do anything with in terms of moving? That's just a review, I believe. We could probably just review that and then move on. I don't think it was any issue. It just needed to be.
Always worth looking at.
Yeah. So we can do those, and then we'll look to see by the time the month's over with whether there's anything else that we need to add on out there in terms of the different things. And Lisa may have some questions, and somebody else may have something else. Is that okay? So if there's nothing else, then we're scheduled for February 1st. Is that going to be okay with everybody? February 1st to have another meeting? That's
Good.
first Monday in February. And we won't have a long agenda, but we'll have an opportunity to have those things out to the boards and from SVSU, and then have some other comments about some of the other policies. So do we need to have any other topics that this board committee can think of right now on there? If not, we'll think about it for 2 or 3 weeks, and then we'll make an agenda ready for the next February meeting. Is that it? Okay, well, I really want to thank everybody for coming on board, and I think the conversation was a real healthy one to make sure that we all share alike in terms of understanding how we go about trying to do things for the good of the function of the districts and so forth. So, okay.
Well, I appreciate this committee and the SVSU board meetings that I've participated in. You all have made it very easy. I know there's a ton of work going on behind the scenes, but as a board member, you've made this very easy for us to transition into your structure and your processes. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Dick, anything else?
Forced marriage.
Forced marriage. Okay.
Sometimes they work.
Yeah. Until next time, I wanted to just say we'll see you later, and thanks.
Good night, everyone.
Yep.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good night.